through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m., and you can hear us on iTunes, on Netroots Radio, on KMUZ in Salem now. They're running a 9 to 11 Monday show with the best of Carl in the morning. Aaron Mesh is with us now, reporter for Willamette Week. The new issue's out. WWeek.com is the website. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Carl. Good to be here.
Good morning, and you have a story in Willamette Week called A Visit from the TriMet Squad, and I must say that it's a great break for us from Angela Merkel having her phone bugged from the NSA. I've actually, in effect, I've learned a lot about Angela Merkel, her past, and without even listening to her phone conversations, but I'm kind of done with Angela right now and want to move on to another story of someone who is active on social media. And TriMet says it's harassment. Give us the story.
So this is a story about a local blogger named Lane Jensen. Lane Jensen runs a blog called Portland Transit Lane, which criticizes and harangues the regional transit agency, mostly about buses not running on schedule and the executives making too high of salaries. Lately, he's been focused more on that second part, on the executive pay, which is understandable considering that TriMet executives gave themselves a secret raise last year. So at any rate, he's grown increasingly, what's the term, hostile in his questioning of the agency. He sees himself as a watchdog journalist, and he's had real watchdog scoops. But recently, he decided, after the death of a teenager at a Holgate Max station, that he wanted TriMet officials to answer a question about when they were going to increase security on their buses. And so he began texting the personal cell phone of one of their spokespeople. He actually started texting the cell phones of about half a dozen of their executives and spokespeople. But he kept sending texts about every 5 minutes, asking the same question over and over again. And then 2 days later, he was arrested for telephonic harassment.
Telephonic harassment. Is that the actual charge? Is there a statute?
There is. The Class B misdemeanor, which carries a maximum sentence of 6 months. He was charged with 20 counts, which means he was charged with up to 15 years in jail. And he was arrested, interestingly, by the division of the police that work for TriMet. So in other words, he was arrested by transit cops.
He was arrested by transit cops. That's almost, I don't know how postmodern that is.
It's a little strange, and that's what caught our eye, obviously, is that here was a guy sitting in his office his office is at a dispatch desk for a limousine rental company. And he's sitting in his office, and all of a sudden 4 transit police, which are the guys you often see out on the MAX stations or on the trains enforcing the law there, all of a sudden 4 of them walk in, cuff him, confiscate his cell phone, confiscate his laptop, both of which they still have, by the way, and declare that he won't be getting them back anytime soon and take him off to jail.
Is he considered a journalist?
Depends on who you ask. I would consider him a journalist, certainly. TriMet certainly wouldn't. He is a blogger, and the blogging work that he does, I would say, certainly counts as journalism. He writes about news issues revolving around TriMet. He's an opinion writer, certainly, and a lot of his stuff is caustic and not tremendously objective. He engages in fairly personal attacks. He is mean and writes nasty things about individuals on the TriMet board. But I'm not sure any of that is very different than, say, Gawker. Maybe not quite professionally done. But
well, the question is,
he's engaged in a very common practice of journalism at this point.
Okay. Let's say that we take your definition that he is a journalist, still, as a journalist, is he still, do you feel these 20 counts of telephonic harassment, because you can be a journalist and not harass, if you separate these charges from whether he's a journalist or not, doing his job, do the charges, in your opinion, have some merit?
Some merit, certainly. But 15 years in jail's worth of merit?
Well, who set the statute, and who set the, as prescribed by law, the term for telephonic harassment?
Well, it changes from state to state. I know that Oregon's is codified in by the state of Oregon.
Did you talk to?
I see the question you're raising, and it's an interesting question. I think the whole story is filled with
Sure.
weird ambiguities.
Did you speak with Lane for the story?
I did. He is, as one might expect, somewhat terrified. And clearly wishes he hadn't sent those texts, which is a marked difference from the general glee he felt while he was sending those texts.
Right.
And is now not willing to take a plea bargain, because a plea bargain that has been offered to him by the DA would be on these terms: 6 days in jail, no big deal. And I look at it, but 6 days in jail, 30 days probation, 30 hours community service, 3 years probation, and 3 years order to refrain from any contact with the spokeswoman who he texted.
Well, that sounds like a damn good deal to me.
Well, that 3 years of no contact means that's 3 years he can't attend any board meetings of TriMet. Meaning he essentially can no longer cover the agency.
Okay. So that would prohibit him from doing reporting, quote, in parentheses, without harassment, unquote, on his beat.
Right.
Okay. Is there any negotiation with the plea bargain? Who represents him? Has he made a counteroffer to the plea bargain that you know of, or anyone representing him?
He has a court-appointed attorney, and he is going to trial.
When will the trial?
I think it's November 26th.
Oh man, Thanksgiving.
That I've heard.
Thanksgiving week?
Maybe not November 23rd then. But at any rate, yes, Thanksgiving week.
Are they going to have the trial on a max?
Oh, I hope so. I hope they have the trial on a max and the sentencing on a bus. Well played.
Well played. Wow. What to be honest with you, we had a very packed show this morning, and I've just been skimming the article right before you came on. What is your takeaway from this? Step out of, use your your reporting skills here, but what do you take from this very odd story? What did you learn about it that you didn't know? What concerns do you have about the whole process here that you might not have had before?
The thing that I take away from it is, I guess, twofold. Is that you have an abuse of power on both sides, which is what's sort of interesting about it. You have this 26-year-old kid who sees himself as a vengeful hacktivist in the almost Julian Assange mode, where he's going to reveal all the negative information and bother everyone until he gets what he wants. As I mean, you can call him a journalist maybe, but also just as like a kind of informational scourge, right?
Okay.
And then he got so carried away with his own vision of himself that he crossed clear legal boundaries, and moved into some kind of place that was obviously nowhere near journalism. On the other hand, you also have a transit agency that doesn't like being criticized, that doesn't like being told that it's wrong, that doesn't like getting questions that are not fond. And it is by far the most hostile local governments to reporters questioning that I've experienced.
Okay, interesting.
And it's a local government that sends out its own press releases to argue with stories in the Oregonian and Willamette. Just declaring, here are the real facts, not the ones you read in the paper. So you have an agency that is hostile to questions and to being pressed by any media, that is now deploying its own police to protect itself from annoying questions.
So in other words, there's a part of the strategy field by TriMet being so visible in the arrest and the charges is to institute a chilling effect. Do you feel that's part of this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been walking around the phrase "chilling effect," but it's pretty hard to avoid, right? Like, I think what you have here is a pretty clear statement by an agency that push us too hard as a activist, as a reporter, as an information peddler, or whatever you are if you're an independent journalist in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
Push us too hard, and we will push back. And and that's not saying that I don't think that Jensen committed a crime, and that's not saying that I don't think that he went way over the line that any responsible journalist would go. So that's a tricky situation that you have here. Is you have, I think, again, an abuse of power on both sides.
Very well said.
To themselves as being possible to check. Right.
Which adds texture and interest to the story. I would say that they're throwing him under the bus, but I don't want to go there with that cliche either. It's too easy. Way too easy, yet I just did it.
You could also say he's been railroaded.
Just too easy, Aaron. It's way too easy, and yet, we took the easy route.
We could do this for days.
Couldn't we?
No one has ever said we weren't lazy.
No. We'll take the easy option. On a side note, did I notice in the news last week that TriMet has found $3.1 million or gotten it to get the bus routes back next year on the major lines to the promise of a bus every 15 minutes? Did I read that?
Yeah, they're restoring frequent service, and that actually may be a contextual note of worth in this story is that you may see some of the hostility between the agency's critics and the agency itself begin to either dissipate or shift, because you are seeing TriMet beginning to decide not to cut back service. They still have this gigantic mess with their union and its contract, and that's nowhere near being resolved. Because the root of all this, you have to understand the root of the hostility between the agency and its critics, and the root of cutback service is the same thing, which is they are stuck with this impossible contract that they signed back in the 90s, and they are essentially playing a weird kind of union-busting game where they threaten service until they can win their union negotiations. And because of that background, I think that's part of where the irrationality of some of the hostility toward TriMet creeps in, is that people feel, including Lane Jensen, but including many riders. I think if you poll people who are truly transit dependent, feel like the agency is, the phrase I always hear from people is that they are screwing them to gain a buck from the drivers. And so as long as this battle continues, you're going to see that feeling of hostility between customers and TriMet. And I think that as TriMet begins to loosen its purse a little bit and make some concessions and recognize that the finances aren't quite as dire as they've been portrayed, or as they were, even as they actually were a year ago, I'm not sure that the hostility is going to go away. Like, a lot of these people have essentially decided that TriMet is the devil itself. And again, I can understand how that happens. It happens because, like, when you are waiting on a bus and you have no other means of getting around, there's no one you hate more than the person that you are entirely dependent upon, right?
Right. Exactly right. I would only say that, if you look at the buses that are running in Portland, and you want to see the devil, it's Lars Larson on the side of the bus next to me. That would be what I would say.
Has your coalition disintegrated so quickly.
Great story, Aaron. Really terrific story. And as you say, there's more to be told because as you enlarge the frame there about TriMet and the animosity it's engendered and the greater story about the agency, this particular one will fit into that narrative as we move forward. I guess the only thing we haven't really come full circle on is if Angela Merkel were the head of TriMet, how would she have handled this? I guess only the NSA knows.
Well, you can always ask them, but don't ask them on their cell phone repeatedly because they'll be very upset.
No. I can only hope that someone listening right now is energetic and concerned enough to call us from the NSA and let us know. Aaron, thank you very much for a terrific story. It's in the new issue of Willamette Week. wweek.com is the website. Aaron, talk to you soon. See you on the bus.
Carl, great talking with you.
Thank you.
See you on the bus.
All right. I'm actually literally on the bus with Lars Larson.